Hi, I'm Caitlin Juries, and this is over women's rights to reproduction during the second wave of feminism. The past for all women is one that they were all considered subordinates to males. Men were the ones that made the decisions and were the breadwinners for the family, and the women were the ones that stayed at home to tend to the family. This was the reality for women until the 1960s, when the second wave of feminism erupted and the future for women was looking brighter. The second wave of feminism started in the 1960s and continued until the 1990s. The second wave was a major development for the rights of women, especially with equality and their rights to protect their own bodies. There were also issues of violence against women and women's participation in politics. They wanted an equal opportunity at everything that men do. They wanted to break the barriers and prove that women can do the same that men can do. They were tired of feeling secondary and not like an important contributor to the family. President Kennedy also made it a priority of his to help the women. This was even before the second wave of feminism was in full force. He appointed Eleanor Roosevelt to lead what was called the President's Commission on the Status of Women that he created in 1961. The report that it had supported the nuclear family, which is a mother and a father and the children, each knowing their roles in the family, and that women are supposed to be prepared for motherhood. Even though that was the main focus of the group, it also wanted to fix the discrimination between men and women, and it brought legislation problems with the unequal pay between the two. There was three waves of feminism, and the first wave of feminism occurred in the late 19th century and early 20th century, and it dealt with women's suffrage. The first wave dealt with women's education and their independence. The third wave of feminism started in the mid-1990s. Women in the third wave wanted to stand out and take a stand more on their lives. They started to wear high heels and lipstick and low-cut shirts because they wanted to show that a woman can look nice and still have a brain. They were trying to define feminine beauty in the third wave for themselves and not just as an object of a man. The third wave of feminism broke boundaries for women, and this is how the world now portrays women pretty much. Reproductive rights are the right to maintain the goals of development and exercise control over the person's sexual and reproductive lives. It includes having a voluntary choice about who the person marries and how many children they want and the spacing between the two. It also includes the equality of men and women, and it includes the right to privacy and freedom from sexual violence. Men have been seen as ones that, if they're promiscuous, that no one really turns an eye to them. But if a woman is promiscuous, she's frowned upon and is usually called bad names. This goes along with contraceptives also. A man doesn't really care about protection because it isn't his responsibility if the woman got pregnant. He can simply leave and have nothing to do with the child, and then the woman is forced to raise the child on her own. And until the 1960s, there were no form of contraceptive for women, so a lot of times they tried to perform their own their own abortion, and that happened illegally, and they were definitely not safe conditions. There were and still are many institutions like churches and just people in general that don't support any type of contraceptive. They see them as a sin and they shouldn't be used. People thought that birth control was an excuse for women to go out and be promiscuous, and people seen an uprising in cohabiting when a couple was not married. They all thought that it was a sexual revolution happening. People stated that it wasn't a sexual revolution, but it was more of people being open and honest about what was happening. The court case of Roe v. Wade changed the world, and in 1973 the Supreme Court heard Jane Roe, and she fought for the abortion laws. She fought that it violated her constitutional rights. Many states are actually fighting back the decision to make abortion legal. North Dakota, for example, bans abortion after 6 weeks, which can be difficult for a person to even know if they're pregnant at that time, and Arkansas bans it at 12 weeks. The second wave of feminism has changed the world and it's still affecting it today. Oftentimes, it has been said that abortions have saved many women's lives, and more women are likely to die in childbirth than they are during an abortion. Women have also been able to save childbirth until the time that they are ready, and they are able to space out their children if they would like. People are often outraged, though, at the providers of abortions, and those providers are often threatened for their lives, and some have even been killed for it. The abortion conflict has been one of the biggest issues since the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision, and abortion is one of the most difficult conflicts for people to decide upon when they elect an official for office. The Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision has even affected other countries. Like in Great Britain, the Abortion Act of 1967 was enacted. It allowed 2 practitioners to examine a woman and determine if the pregnancy needed to be terminated for the woman's health, and the abortion is legal up to 28 weeks. In India, the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act in 1971 determined a woman could have an abortion up to 12 weeks, and they also had to have a registered medical practitioner examine them and make sure it was in the woman's best interest. They could also abort it if it was determined that the fetus was going to suffer a severe physical or mental disability. The second wave of feminism sought to eliminate gender roles in society and eradicate sexism. The women wanted to prove that men were not superior to them, and the way people thought needed to be changed. The second wave brought about new abortion laws and allowed women to have contraceptives to protect their reproductive rights, so women were now permitted to make their own informed decisions about their bodies. The Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision made it legal for women to have an abortion, and it brought up the concern for women's health and that they may need to terminate a pregnancy in order to protect themselves and their own health. The country will never come together on a decision because there are so many people with differing opinions. The second wave of feminism brought about much change for women and has changed history and the world as we know it.